So we are ready now for our one-on-one interview, which will be Asia's captivating women, the risks of taking risk into your own hands. The risk management personality that we will bring to the stage is Raziyah Yahya, board member of AIG Malaysia. Ms. Raziyah Yahya was formerly an advisor and head of group insurance of Petroleum Nasional Berhad or Petronas. She's been with Petronas Group Insurance since May of 1978 until her retirement in December of 2017. Ms. Raziyah was formerly the CEO of Enagas from 2009 to 2017. And to interview her on stage will be Suchitra Narayanan, the board member of PARIMA Malaysia. Suchitra worked for various financial, insurance, investment and investment management and oil and gas organizations in London and Kuala Lumpur and is currently head of risk at Air Asia Berhad. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Suchitra and Raziyah.
Thank you very much, Raziyah, and thank you for the introduction. So I think for this session, I wanted to move away from the technical captive speak and really just have a candid discussion about your career because, you know, the theme is captivating and you have had a very illustrious and captivating career. So I just wanted to maybe talk about that a little bit and share your experiences with the audience. So first of all, maybe you can just talk us through how you got into insurance and you know, how long you've been doing it for, some of the, you know, the key milestones in your career. So please.
Okay. Well, the topic itself, captivating, also frightens me actually, the first word. How do I get into insurance, okay? Insurance has never been really my ambition as such. I happened to kind of, you know, get involved in insurance by sheer chance. Because when I went for an interview at the local college, I was applying for a slightly different course, yeah? But apparently that course was fully taken up, and the only course that students are not sort of, you know, going for, as you can see, we're talking about insurance being very underweight, is insurance. So that was how I, you know, landed myself in insurance, and the interviewer was asking me, why not you take up this course, because the other course that you're looking for is fully subscribed. And of course, when you talk about insurance, the first thing that comes to mind during my time, yeah, here, I believe there's lots of X and Y gen here. Well, I come from the baby boomers era, okay? So the subject of insurance, what is known to most people in insurance in Malaysia at that time was just, you want to be an insurance agent. Yeah? It has never been looked upon as a profession as such in those years. Hence, you know why sometimes, you know, one tend to relate insurance as a second cousin to finance. Everybody will go for accountancy courses, that kind of stuff. You know, the basic, the normal, typical professional courses that one will go for, but never insurance. Yeah. So that's how I landed myself in insurance, and well, because I said, because I decided to just go into the tertiary higher level. Okay, try to make the best out of it, and it was tough. It wasn't easy. Because the college was conducting this particular course, the Chartered Insurance Institute UK. And you being a 17, 18-year-old, yeah, doing a UK syllabus, you do not know what, you know, what environment is like. You know, so you see things like flue gas pipes, Belfast roofing in your subjects. None of these are applicable in Malaysia. So there's a lot of imagination. It was tough for us, I mean, my best students those years, to go through this so-called the Chartered Insurance Institute course, yeah? Basically, this is an external course, and the exams are all being conducted here in association with the Insurance Institute, yeah, Malaysian Insurance Institute, and of course, the papers are all being sort of, you know, sent to UK for marking, and that journey taking up that course is not easy, because you have to start, for me, because I had an O-levels, I do not have any A-levels at that stage, so you got to go through the introductory phase. This is the old syllabus of the CI, where they have this time bar issue. The first phase, the introductory, they call it, 4 papers you have to clear within 3 years. Exam is only once a year. So if you fail one paper, you got to wait for the next year, yeah, to resit for that one paper. There's no referral sitting those years. Once you clear the first part, you go to the next part, which they call it qualifying. That you are given 6 years to clear your 8 papers out of the 12. Yeah? So if you clear, say, 11 papers up to the 5th year or the 6th year, and if you don't clear the last paper, all the papers that you pass will be discredited. So it was pretty tough, actually. And when my colleagues, I mean, some of my classmates, so when we plunged into this course, after a while we regretted. This is tough course. We should have taken an internal course, which is much easier, conducted by the college. Yeah. But then again, you have to make the best out of it. Yeah. And hence that's how I sort of continue. And I did leave the college with a part passes. Yeah. Because there's no point staying on when you already had certain papers. So I left college only after the 3rd year. And whilst I was working, then I realized the CRI syllabus those days, that even in UK, they do not conduct the CRI course on a full-time basis. Yeah, in UK, they call it day evening releases classes, where you work into the industry and then you have your evening releases classes. I'm sure Anthony can vouch for that, those years. Yeah, so somehow ITM in Malaysia was the first in the world, I suspect, that conducted this course on a full-time basis, to some extent to the detriment of the students, because you got dragged on. Yeah, and when I went into the industry to work briefly, yeah, with Maybank Phoenix, I think those days, after 3 years after I've left the college, it's now called Etika. Yeah, briefly for 7 months. But when you work and at the same time you study, you continue some of your papers, then you realize that there is some relationship that you can apply in terms of what the industry is doing and what the papers are telling you. Yeah. So then you can connect, and there is correlation. But if you're a pure student, and mind you, you're doing an exam which is all UK based, you're talking about motor insurance paper, over here is full tariff. UK is not tariff. Now you got to, cite yourself. That kind of a syllabus. So that was a challenge for me in particular, but thank goodness I managed to clear everything, yeah, very much within the time frame. And that's how I landed in insurance. And then, of course, when I was in Maybank Phoenix for a very short while, short stint for 7 months, then I left and joined Petronas, where Petronas was just opening up an insurance department. Yeah, they advertised, and I had to make that decision. Do I want to continue to be in the insurance industry, be an insurer or a broker, or do I have to switch and become an insurance buyer? So that was the decision I made, because when I see there was an opening, I wanted to give it a try. So let me be an insurance buyer. That is the other side of it. That's how I landed up. Eventually, as I was in fact the second staff in the Petronas insurance department. The first staff was someone from the industry, which was my predecessor, the first manager of Petronas insurance department. He was from the industry, and I still consider myself at that point in time very much a greenhorn. Yeah. Not long enough to really understand the practical side of the industry. But when I shift to join Petronas, and of course with the guidance of my superior, I mean my predecessor then, he knows the insurance industry to some extent, okay? And he gave me a good kind of, shall I say, a good training in that sense, yeah? And then of course, because Petronas was very, very young those days. Yeah? When I first joined Petronas, believe it or not, the insurance that Petronas have in place was basically personal accident insurance, motor insurance, and office building. The insurance that you can call complex those years, the early years, that was in the early 80s or late 70s, was what I call a skid tank station. Not even a gas station, just a skid tank station. That was about the most complex insurance those days when I was first involved in the organization. Then, of course, after that, as you know, when Petronas moved, so you kind of grow with the company as well. And then you kind of gone through that entire evolution of the simple risk to the complex risk and straight through to the oil and gas. Then after that, of course, as a spin-off to that, where the captive came into play, when we're talking about as you get more matured, as you start to come of age in terms of understanding the insurance. And that's where then I had a dual role of, both heading the insurance, group in Petronas, and at the same time also running alongside the oil and gas, or rather the captive that we first started. So the captive is also something very challenging, quite interesting, because when we were doing the captive, starting the captive, we had no, shall I say, no mentors those years, no one to turn to help us, to assist us. The only benefit, or rather the benefit that I could gain out of this so-called trying to gather the captive knowledge or the captive, understanding of the captive was with my counterparts, the likes of Exxons and Shell, BP, BG, yeah. So I was fortunate in that sense because I have my counterparts who are always willing to kind of share their knowledge. And of course, then you try to see where does that fit within your entire, setup. So that was how, if you look into the journey, of course it takes about, at the end of the day, about a good 40 years in Petronas, yeah. And I shall say every phase that we went through, because of the organic growth, it has been a different phase as you move along on every stage. From a very simple risk to go into, then you start going into the wells, then you start going into the midstream, and then you go into the upstream, down marketing, retail, the whole facet, yeah, of the insurance industry because, of the oil and gas development until Petronas became an integrated oil and gas company. So the integrated nature of the business is where the risk also comes along with it. That you need to keep pace, and also the insurance market in terms of the energy risk itself, they are also moving in tandem with the growth of the energy industry. Yeah.
Thank you. So, you talked about your journey at Petronas and actually some of the challenges used, when setting up the captive. So I actually wanted to talk about your journey and some of the highs and the lows. So some of the key achievements, but also some of the challenging times that you've had, because we've all had them. So maybe over a 40-year illustrious career, I'm sure you've seen many of those. So maybe you could share some of your experiences with us.
Okay. I wouldn't call it the lows. Yeah, I would call it more of a challenge. Yeah. As an insurance buyer, let's not talk about captive first. As an insurance buyer, when I was a risk manager, Petronas went into all these so-called, third world countries, if you like. We call it the frontier countries or the exotic countries, where we are one of the first few national oil company then, NOC we call it, that went international. Yeah. Meaning our first foray into the international, arena was in Vietnam, actually. Yeah. So that when you go to Vietnam, you go to this country, Vietnam, and then you go to Myanmar, and then of course, if you take the FSU, you go to countries like Turkmenistan. So the challenge going into these countries, because the insurance market at that point in time has not opened up. Yeah. It is in a monopolistic situation. You go to Vietnam, the only insurance company then was Bao Viet. So you only deal with Bao Viet. And of course, they are the regulator. So you have got to, when you deal with them, this is the first time they see foreigners coming into their country. And we have to understand their process. Yeah? And then when we go there, we have got to at least listen and understand and tell them that we are not here to tell you what to do. Yeah? So what I normally do when going into these countries, first of all, is try to, tell them that we are here to share our experience with you. We know that you know the subject matter, but you don't have the opportunity in terms of, getting a feel of that, operation. So we are here to share with you. So you need to get their buy-in first and not appear to be imposing and telling them, we come from this part of the world, we know what we're doing, we're going to tell you to do this, to do that. Because that is basically how we feel initially, Petronas, when the international oil companies came over to Malaysia. They kind of, I do not want to use the word dictate, it's a bit too strong. They'll tell you, oh, this should be this, it should be like this, it should be like that. Yeah? But because we, at that point in time, we listen to them, of course we have some basic knowledge. I mean, if you come from, for me, in a way, also quite fortunate because I come from an insurance background. So certain elements of insurance, yeah, they can't really fool you. You may know the theory, but you may not know the practical side of it. They had the experience, so this is where the sharing comes in. So when you go to these countries, and another challenge over there, you have to talk to them, get their buy-in. Getting the buy-in is not easy because of the language problem. Yeah? So not many people those years speak English in those countries. Yeah? But or okay, it could be what they call halting English. They can, at least they understand you fine. In some countries, you got to use an interpreter. So a 1 hour meeting will turn up to be 2 hours. And sometimes even interpretation can get wrong. So if you go to the former Soviet Union countries, FSU, the CIS, you're bound to get an interpreter to be with you. And even until today as we speak, I believe. But they can speak English, they tend to understand, but official meeting in Russian. So you need to have a Russian interpreter with you. And likewise, when, there was on one occasion, so we learned, those are challenges, as I mentioned, as when we went to Cuba, they speak Spanish, yeah? The Cubans speak Spanish. So we must make sure that our interpreter understand the translation, what we're trying to tell them. Because just one classic case, when we use the word, we have a policy. Policy as in our document, policy, insurance policy. The interpreter understanding of policy is a policy as in policy, your entire policy, yeah? As what is your policy, what is your basically philosophy, yeah? But that's where you tend to have the meeting drag for 1 hour just to get across the misunderstanding of the word policy. When we say policy, it's a policy document, not that policy as they understood. So it was kind of exasperating sometimes, but then when you find out, and of course we smile after that with them and say, okay, that's what we meant. So those are challenges in dealing with these people because especially the insurers who also act as regulator because they are in a monopolistic situation. That is trying to get their buy-in. And of course the other challenges is as you go along over the years, they get a little bit wiser. Yeah? And then of course they will come and say, okay, I want this risk to be ceded 100% to them. And then I want about 60% of the risk retained, although they don't have any share, we have a big equity there. And then you need to balance that because to us, if they take 60% of the risk, and we know that that insurance company being the only insurance company in the country, their paid up is not much. Paid up is only 10 million US. And you're writing a risk, one big blow will blow out 120 million US. So I did once ask them, I said, your paid up is 10 million, you are writing 80% of this risk, okay? And because we have no control actually in terms of their reinsurance placement behind. So it becomes more of a credit risk to us to some extent. So they said, don't worry, even if you don't have any reinsurance, our government will take care. So you stop there. Do not go further and push them. So this is where when you talk to them, you have to get them, have some sense into it and explain to them in a nice manner how the whole insurance actually works. Then once they've understood you, I can tell you, they were more than happy to deal with you, and whatever suggestion you give them, they're happy to help, and they want you, yeah, to give them more awareness how this insurance have been transacted, and they will call you basically on an annual basis when you discuss renewal. You also give presentation, more of market updates, and then knowledge sharing with them at the same time on the particular subject matter. So those are the phases which I did go through into all these countries, pretty challenging. Yeah, the same thing, you go to Mauritania, and you go to Iraq, it's a different story also, to deal with the Arabs, not easy, yeah? So those are things that I find it, very challenging. I wouldn't call it a loss actually, yeah, in that sense.
So you talked us through some of those challenges. So turning that on its side, can you maybe talk us through some of the key achievements that you've had over the 40 years at Petronas and even now in your career, some of the sort of, when you reflect, some of those things that you're really proud of that you've achieved?
A few things, I think. Of course, first that comes to mind easily, the main achievement was the fact that we managed to, set up our captive, and we managed to basically contain the cost of our risk. So that's the main objective of any captive. Yeah, it's not really to try to save costs. Or I heard this morning innovative trying to be a profit center, yeah. But I think in our case, in Petronas' case, at that point in time, we are talking about how do you contain your insurance spend, given the risk that is getting much more, complex, and you're talking about, values just going skyrocketing or whatever. So how do you contain that risk, and what's the best way to optimize that insurance spend? And definitely the captive is one of the, to me, is a very powerful tool to help you in doing that. Yeah? And of course, when you set up your captive, in Petronas' case, we identify certain type of risk that we think the captive has got the appetite to write, okay? And if somebody has, was in the same session last year, I did mention, Petronas being a national oil company, we have this additional obligation. We call it, national, what do you call it, national objective. Yeah, we need to also help the local insurance industry. So where risks that can be retained locally by the insurance market, the so-called, what I call simple risks, yeah, not the complex risk, where the local market has got the retention, has got the capacity to write, we do not really disturb those risks. We leave it to the insurance market, to the local insurance market. Those that the insurance market could not write, these are the risks that goes into the captive, yeah, and then we, of course, then from that element we'll see, okay, these are the bigger risks, and then what is our appetite on this risk, over and above what the local cannot participate. Okay, so that basically the captive is a big achievement for Petronas, because I think over the years, even during our first 5 years of operation, and one of the highlights was that we managed to get ourselves rated by AM Best. The very reason we wanted it to get rated was basically it will facilitate our operations in countries where, in international, arena, whereby we do not want to use fronting for that matter. If you are a rated company, normally the local cedents can accept you as one of their securities behind the risk. So that was where the rating, basically the driver why we want to get ourselves rated, was to get away with all these fronting issues. Yeah? So, I mean, apart from that, I think the other element I believe is that we also managed to assist, I think, the local insurance industry through the formation of the Energy Consortium, which Petronas has taken the, the initiative to assist them by allowing them to participate, because we take cognizance of the fact that this Energy Consortium comprises a local insurance company that could not on their own write the risk, because Petronas puts up strict requirement in terms of the level and type of participation that the local market can write. Yeah, we always put net and formalized treaties only. Yeah, and then even the net formalized treaties still guided by the central banks, Bank Negara's large and specialized risk scheme, and also the treaty retention capacity. So we kind of want to make sure that the local insurers have got the ability as a consortium, as a pool, to write the risk, and also it helps in the retention of the, of those risks in the local market, and also to give the local insurers some knowledge and expertise about what energy risk is all about. At least they get some kind of, they're much more familiar with the risk, and that perhaps could be, an opening for them also to write other risks in the region of the similar kind, apart from just Petronas' risk. Yeah.
Thank you. I think, over the last few decades, it's safe to say that the risk management profession has evolved. Certainly since I've been doing it, whether it's regulation, risk culture, it really has changed quite a lot. And PARIMA, as an organization, we're looking at the competencies that risk managers need to succeed in today's world to be a risk manager. So, people look at you as an inspiration in this field. What are some of the qualities you believe that a risk manager needs today to succeed? Not just today, but if you look at the sustainability of someone's career, what they're going to need in the future years as well.
I think when you talk about risk, risk is something that I think most risk managers, they need to be proactive, not reactive. Yeah, I think the time has passed even when I was the risk manager in the early years, I was a bit reactive to some extent, because those were the early years. But I think, as you mentioned, the entire risk management or the risk landscape has changed, has moved on, So you need to be proactive, no longer reactive, and you're not talking about the past, really. I mean, if you talk about actuarial data, whatever, actuaries will always look in the past, I mean, no offense to the actuaries, because of course we have to use the data which is in the past, But for risk, you have to move forward. You have to be proactive enough to basically anticipate or to some extent preempt, and try to correlate that to your risk in the organization itself. And of course, that's one aspect of it. The other part is that you need to understand your business overall. You are not expected to be, jack of all trades, master of none, but at least you need to understand what those businesses where your organization is involved in. Only then you can really understand the risk. You take project, for instance, yeah? When you do project, okay, you have first of all to understand early at project review stage, meaning drafting of the contracts, the ITBs, the EPCC contract. You need to understand what are the relevant contractual obligations that has been imposed under the contract, and you yourself will have to be involved in the contract drafting itself together with the project guys and the lawyers, because only then, once you've understood to what extent you want to, that you can kind of, accept contractual liabilities, basically risk allocation of those kind of stuff, only then you move to the next stage. Then you look at, okay, I want to make sure that these are the risks under the contract, as far as the project is concerned, and then what kind of insurance am I going to take after that? It's basically to ensure that there should be proper dovetailing between the contractual risk and the insurable risk, because not all risks are covered by insurance. Certain risks remain uninsurable and becomes more business risk. That has got to be, that the project team must have got to be mindful of. Yeah? So if you look at that, then you have to understand the whole spectrum of the risk. Yeah? Enough for you to make a decision in terms of, okay, I need to transfer those that cannot be retained, and to what extent the market can accept those risks. Now, procurement is another element. Yeah? When you talk about, okay, how are you going to do the procurement? Yeah, that's another mode that you got to go through. And whether or not you need to involve brokers, at which stage brokers are involved, yeah, and those are the things that you need to go through. Yeah.
That's great. I hope that helps the risk managers in the audience. Another question I had was, I don't think you can go to a risk management conference nowadays and not talk about technology and digital disruption, right? It seems to be everywhere. And certainly at AirAsia, I mean, it's something that I face all the time in the digital world that we live in. So again, over the last few decades, you must have seen technology changing the way insurance is managed, run, bought, etc. So could you maybe just talk us through some of the observations that you've had, how technology has, had a positive influence, or where you think it hasn't, in the sort of span of your career?
Okay, Ben, when this technology came about, it was only the last 5 years, I can say last 5 years or so. It really kind of took off the ground, yeah. Where I was involved in before on the energy, there's not so much of the technology from the insurance standpoint that's impacting us, yeah, because I heard about all this blockchain, all those stuff, yeah. If you're looking at businesses that is very, or rather, more on process, that is very voluminous in nature, and the micro insurance element, this blockchain, this technology plays a very important role. I have no doubt about that. It helps in all the entire transactional process. But for the bigger risks, yeah, the more complex risks, be it power, aviation, or energy, oil and gas, I have not seen a lot of what we call impact on technology insofar as the insurances are concerned. They're slowly moving into the technology in terms of just policy documentation, yeah. Where the technology helps to some extent is where all the tools are being developed to assist. Those are where the technology comes into play, in terms of determining your what you call your risk temperature in certain countries, whether or not you should go into this business. In those countries where you want to, that you have to work hand in hand with the corporate strategy group. And I think insurance has got a very important input, yeah, where I think most big insurance companies, they've got their in-house tools, yeah. Excel Catlin has one, I think Zurich has, Swiss Re has. Those are important too. And to me, that is technology, where you have the input given, the data, what they call analytics, yeah. Those are part of the technology that slowly, gaining momentum, yeah. Where we can also, our type of risk can also get into that we can capitalize on it as well. That's how I see it, yeah. And it is important. I'm not saying that, because process of documents, especially if you are all over the world, you're operating in many countries, processing of documents is very important, and more so for captive. Now, I used to be one of my consultants in the early days when we were setting up a captive. We did ask him, what are the pitfalls of a captive that you have seen insofar as oil and gas companies are concerned? And apart from all the others that you hear this morning, one thing he says, one of the pitfalls of an insurance company, or of a captive, is administrative slip-ups. Where your administration, documentation, where you cannot capture your revenue, your payables, your receivables, and all those stuff, which is basically not in order, basically your system, process, procedures are not in place, that could be one of the pitfalls of a captive. It's very simple, but it's just that can be quite critical, can be fatal to some extent, because he mentioned to me he has seen and he has kind of looked into it, and he was faced with trying to solve the problem, which is basically administrative slip-ups. And when Petronas had this captive, I do experience that administrative challenges that we need to go through, my team need to go through at that point in time. Now with more computers, more system, and more so when you talk about GST or the documentation that flies in and out, and given the structure of the captive, which is in Labuan, it is a reinsurance company, and then you got to go to the local cedant, and then the way also Petronas places its risk, it's a bit different. We have got local, we got international, and you got certain tiers, and then go faculty, various tiers. It's quite a complex structure in terms of the placement. You need to get the papers in order, and so that you know where the flow of the money, the receivables, and the payables. Because otherwise, if it is not done properly, you cannot get your account closed. Even actuaries will have difficulty in trying to validate your account at the end of the day. So those is to the next level of it. Okay?
Great. When I started out in risk management, one of my first bosses said to me, whatever you do in your career, make sure you have a good mentor. Because you'll need that, whether you are doing a junior role as you get more senior, a mentor, whether it's in the industry or outside, is always very important. Can you maybe share some of the career advice that you've received over the years and how you've actually used that in shaping your career?
Career advice, I'm trying to think of something. Actually, because I go along with the, the flow, effectively. And I must say that it comes from various sources. First and foremost, I think the Petronas' management, particularly my superior, they have given me, full trust and confidence in what I do. And when they do that, you yourself will have to tell yourself, okay, since the management has given you the full confidence, you must not betray the trust. So you have to make sure that you always have to produce and tell them exactly this is what. That's one part of it. The other element, which, if you would like to call it advice, whatever, brokers have been very helpful. And that's one aspect, the brokers, both the local and the international brokers. And also, when the brokers start to build the bridge between you and your lead underwriters in London, who are basically the players or the leader on your program that decides what are the risks. Now, then when you have got these three parties, the underwriter, the broker, and yourself as a risk owner. So you have this kind of, a strategic alliance, if you like to call it, between three parties, and this is where you have this kind of a relationship, and you gain all the knowledge. Because I don't have a direct mentor advisor to tell me you should do this. No, it is always in terms of very collaborative in nature. So that can only happen, the building of relationship, because insurance at the end of the day is a people's business. You need to know the people, You need to know who your provider is, who your intermediary is. But at the same time, you must not overstep the role, in the sense that, just because I know the underwriter, I'm not so happy what my broker is telling me, I'm going to go direct to the underwriter. Never do that. You do not overstep. And that you have to respect each party's role. That is very important and key. Unless they say, okay, Raziyah, you can go to him directly and ask him exactly. Unless you get that, then you can go straight. But as long as you respect each other's role, in a very professional manner, then they are there with you all the time. To build that relationship is not an overnight, it's not an overnight thing. You need to, build over a couple of years. And that, again, goes back to your procurement process. Do you bid your program every year? Okay? Some has a policy that I have to bid my program every year to give everybody the opportunity, the chance. To me, as a risk manager, which you are also a procurement person, that is a wrong approach, a strong strategy. You must have got valid reason why you have to bid. Sometimes they said, whether it's in a soft market or hard market, whatever, there are reasons why you bid, but do not make it a habit to bid every year. You must have a proper criteria at which stage you do your bidding. Unless your broker is not really giving you the service, then of course you need to change, and the only way to change is to go through bidding. Yeah? Because I used to tell my brokers, some of my brokers, to make sure that, because I've been described as quite a demanding client actually. Yeah, but I like to believe that I'm fair, although I'm demanding. I used to tell some of the brokers, listen, I said, when I start to give you solutions to my problem, okay, you remember your days as my brokers are numbered. So you have to give them a little bit of that warning. Sometimes they can be a bit complacent, yeah? So you have to give them that kind of a signal. Yeah? So if you're talking back to your question, your advice, whatever, it's not any one particular, source or party that gives it to me, but first and foremost, I am very grateful to my management. Yeah? They have given me the least interference in how I do things. Yeah? They do not really kind of do a detailed micromanaging of what you do. If they do detailed micromanaging, you have to remember, insurance is it's a very dry subject to some of those that are not in the insurance industry. And for you to explain to your management, who are basically accountants, engineers, or whatever, to them, insurance is something is alien to them, is Greek to them. Yeah? The challenge that I face is that when I explain to them, how do I break all this insurance terminology, the purpose of insurance, into simple layman's terms, for them to be able to understand, yes, it's important. If you start telling them this is the price cover, they will never understand. Yeah? They say, I want to know, I've got no claim, why am I paying this? Yeah? So that's basically where it's a challenge, simple. If you want to have, two ways to look at it. You want to have an easy job, you can have an easy job as a risk manager. Sit back, give to the brokers. Okay, you got your program, and then you manage to achieve 5 or 10% reduction in premiums. Not talking about cover or whatever. You tell your management, yes, I managed to achieve 5 or 10% reduction in the premium. Mention, okay, fine, good. Okay, sit back, do nothing. Yeah, and then when it comes to renewal time, open up the files again, brokers come and see you. You could do that, but I can tell you, a risk manager of that type, you will never learn. You will not grow, you will never learn because you don't know what's going on. Yeah? So, or you can basically, sit down, and then it's an ongoing process, although the procurement process is completed, you've given your management whatever, and then it's an ongoing process, updating, brokers give you updates, and you start to come up with new ideas, new innovation to your package. Looking into where the market is, and then because you got to go, I've watched all the cycles, soft and in my years in the industry, the soft and hard cycle, and how do you manage those cycles? The soft cycle, the hard cycles, but to some extent, I think we are also very fortunate. We managed to get ourselves insulated from 2 major cycles. One is September 11. We rolled in 3 years, we were spared that 2/11. The other is the financial crisis. So those are not really financial crisis, sorry, is the Katrina and the hurricane 2005, where the market was really hit badly. So that all goes back to how you program, you formulate your program to such an extent that you get yourself insulated from really the hard knocks of the market, from the vagaries of the market.
Okay, great. Well, there are lots of questions from the audience, and I'm not surprised because I have heard you being referred to as the queen of insurance, so I'm really not surprised. There are lots of questions here. So the first one, over the 40 years of your working life in the insurance industry, what is the one thing you would like to change and why? This sounds like a Miss Universe question, by the way, but that's fine.
I've been retired for almost a year now. What is the one thing that you would like to change? And why? Not an easy question to answer. But one thing I think, because, the competency of the people, to me, I think the industry still lacks good talent in certain specialized areas, because I believe there has been a dearth of talent in all those areas. You're talking about the transactional, run-of-the-mill kind of business. Yes, we have enough people in the industry, and I see that is quite lacking in the local, from the local insurance standpoint. And even if you talk about international market, also, I get this feedback from my brokers. They said there's a kind of a gap, between certain age. I guess that must be a function of the economic condition then, when the industry were not recruiting people. So you do not get the right talent. There's a gap between those, at the very senior level and those at the mid-level. There's no strong, what you call the next succession kind of, gap in that level. So it's basically back to competency, and I'm sure the change that we need to see, maybe perhaps, with this technology and process that's coming on, maybe I think the insurance industry may want to take advantage of that. But the only thing that I see whether that will really get off the ground, all this technology, this blockchain stuff, is that for risk that requires personal or rather face-to-face discussion, I don't think that can be replaced by technology. Yeah, that has got to be borne in mind. Risk that is very, very, very technical in nature, big, huge risk, you still need a personal discussion or contact, and that will remain, I believe. But other than that, you can always blend that together with the other, more to do with the processing element, that I think would, would be something that I think the industry should move towards. Yeah.
Sure. I mean, taking that question and just weaving in, again, the title of this session, Captivating Women, over the 40 years, have you seen more and more women sort of entering this industry? And actually, 40 years ago, potentially there weren't as many. And was it challenging as a woman to be, first of all, in the oil and gas industry, which is also predominantly, was male-dominated, and then insurance as well. So that must have been challenging at the start. So maybe could you share some of those experiences or lessons that you've learned from that?
Yeah, I think the women in the industry, I think the women are really catching up, I guess, yeah. Only that because maybe some reasons, or whether it's culture, whether it's social, whatever, once they hit a certain stage, they tend to kind of back down. Yeah, leaving all talking about the most, the top tier, yeah. You look at the middle management, there are lots of women, yeah. But to inch up to the next level, yeah, some of them kind of, back down a little bit. I noticed that. I'm not too sure why, whether it is culture, whether it is social, or whether or not, it's just that the guys say, okay, we don't have enough space or whatever. I'm not too sure, yeah. But I guess, because for me, in the oil and gas industry, on the insurance side, I can see that the women involvement is there, but at a very slow pace. Yeah, it's still being overwhelmed by the guys. Yeah, and you as a woman, to me, the men will just treat you equally. I mean, they treat you fine. I have no problem with it. Sometimes maybe it is the women themselves. Yeah. Do you blame the situation? Do you blame the environment? I don't think so. You can blame that. Yeah? It is up to you at the end of the day. How passionate are you in terms of your career, in terms of what you do? So to me, passion is something that has got to be with you. Because with passion, your knowledge, everything will come naturally. That's how I see it. Yeah? Because I'm quite passionate, because I find the job, the work which I'm involved in, pretty interesting. Yeah? There's always something that you need to learn, always something new, every year as you go on. You see, because you start from the day when it was non-digital, if I can recall, it's typewriter, everything, you do typing, yeah? Then it goes to fax. Now you have all this, and then we get a little bit more advanced with slideshows, yeah? Transparency slideshows. You carry all the stuff. Now it's just, your thumb drive you carry around, that's it. You see how the world has changed in the last 40 years. I mean, I see that movement, those years where I have to carry big files, heavy files, computers were heavy, laptops. But you see, all this have changed, yes? Then again, as I say, it's up to the women themselves, yeah, to be where they are if they want to, yeah? If they do not want to, there's nobody can force you, yeah? But I'm saying that, but for them to do that, they must equip themselves with the right knowledge, skill, and then on the, in terms of market savviness, yeah, your interaction with the market. But if you have enough knowledge, you'll be able to, to interact with people in a much more professional manner, yeah. And you can put your views across and articulate in a way that people can understand. Yeah.
Great. Well, there's one question that's inched up to the top of the screen, which I would like to know as well. How do you manage your insurance brokers?
No offense to any brokers. I'm sure there's some brokers here. Okay, how do you manage brokers? I got to pause a little. I don't want to offend anybody. But okay, as far as brokers are concerned, you find there are two types of brokers basically. One is pure transactional. The other will give you the added value, yeah, over and above the transactional. And I think the way I manage brokers, I will look at basically their strength. Not all brokers are good in all areas. Okay? And the key thing to managing brokers or determining brokers is to make sure that they are niche in their respective areas. So the word is niche. Yeah? You can be a very big broker, number one broker in the world. Yeah? But the area that you're looking at, you may not have the depth. Yeah? You may be strong, big and mighty, but maybe shallow in that element. You may want to go for the next tier broker or the other broker, the so-called broker in that particular area. These are niche brokers. Niche by which I mean, they know the subject matter, yeah, they can give you the right advice, and they know the right market to use. Yeah? So you deal with the underwriters directly, and then you get what you want. Yeah? So to me, that's the reason, I don't know, because I'm out of Petronas now, I don't know what the new philosophy in Petronas, but when I was there, I make sure that I identify the brokers according to our book of business that we have, and if I feel that this broker is good in this particular area, yeah, we'll use them. Yeah? I know that some brokers do advocate so-called one-stop center, yeah, where everything then they start. To me, that's not a very efficient way of doing things because you are a bit remote to the direct account handler because you're just dealing with the focal. And dealing with the focal doesn't help because they're there more of a facilitator to you and they're using all their resources. They can be a very big company, yeah, so it's best to just go direct to the specialists themselves. Unless they are good in every area, that's fine. I mean, that is basically, hence you see Petronas, we have got a group of brokers. We don't deal with one particular broker. Yeah? So I think we have got a good 5-6 brokers on the program, depending on how you devise your insurance structure program. Depending on the classes, I think Petronas have got a big enough portfolio that can be broken up into the respective segments, that can go to certain brokers that are good in that area. And that also depends, you give also local brokers that may not have the expertise in certain areas, but they have in these areas, so you kind of do a tiering for them, and everybody gets the opportunity to do that. Of course, your procurement process must be very robust in determining which brokers that you want.
That's right. Well, unfortunately, time is up, but I'd like to thank you for sharing your valuable insights with us. It's a real honor to hear from you. So thank you again for being so candid and honest with your experiences. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much to Suchitra and Raziyah.